All right. And our recording has begun. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Judy Houle. I'm the interim superintendent here at the Greenfield Public Schools. And I want to welcome you to this afternoon's webinar on our return to in-person learning plan. Just a little bit about our meeting structure. We're going to try and keep it to 1 hour because we, again, want to respect everyone's time. This is going to provide an overview of the in-person learning plan based on questions that were submitted ahead of time, so that will guide our conversation. This is in a webinar format, so cameras and microphones are off for all but our panelists, just so you're aware of that as well. And I just want to introduce everybody who's on our panel this afternoon for this webinar. So I'm going to start with Principal Patnode from Greenfield High School. Ms. Patnode, if you want to unmute and put on your video and say hello.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Patnode. I'm the principal of Greenfield High School and very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
And Principal Dole from Greenfield Middle School.
Greetings. This is Principal Lynn Dole at Greenfield Middle School. It's a pleasure to have you here with us, and we're so looking forward to having your students joining us.
And Principal Putnam from Discovery Four Corners School.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Casey Putnam. I'm the principal of the Discovery School Four Corners. Welcome.
And Principal Fenimore from Federal Street School.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michelle Fenimore, principal at Federal Street School. Happy to have you here today.
And Principal Goodwin from Newton School.
Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to sharing information with you and to answering some of the questions that are in the community.
And last but not least, I want to introduce to you Justin Martin, who's going to act as our facilitator today.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Before we get started, Justin, I just thought, well, I'm going to do a little quick poll. If you wouldn't mind, I'm going to launch a poll and have you tell us where your children attend school. And if you're on staff, you can pick the building that you work at. So here comes the poll. And it looks like people are still sharing with us where their children attend school. Okay, and it looks like we are done. So I'm going to end the poll and I'll share the results with you. And you can see that we have people here from middle school is the big winner at noon today, with 39% of our participants coming from Greenfield Middle School. And it's nice to see we don't have anybody from the Academy of Early Learning, but we do have from all of our other schools. So that's great. And we appreciate that you were able to share that with us. That kind of helps us think through the structure of this afternoon's webinar. So Justin, take it away.
Thanks, Dr. Houle. Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Justin Martin. I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer for TMS. We're an education management consulting firm that's currently working with the Greenfield Public Schools. My role this afternoon is to serve as the facilitator of the public forum. And in doing so, it's my goal to get to as many questions as possible and have those questions answered by the appropriate educational leader, be it the principal or the superintendent. We collected over the last couple of days more than 130 questions from parents and community members in advance of this meeting. I've culled that list down to about 15 to 20 questions that were asked most often and summarized those concerns from the community into 5 topic areas. So those topic areas that, just to give you the advance notice on this, is that remote learning, transportation issues, meals and free time, classroom setup, and COVID concerns. And so without further ado, we'll get started in this process. And I'll ask Dr. Houle the first question, which is one of the questions we got most often from the community was, is it mandatory for my child to come back to school?
Thanks. So I just want to share a little background as I try to answer this and why we are at the place that we're at right now. On March 5th, the Commissioner of Education met with the State Board of Elementary and Secondary Education to get approval for a plan to a full return to in-person learning. And the timeline that was set was April 5th for elementary students, April 28th for middle school students, and then to be determined at the high school level. There was some flexibility given to districts based on the grade configuration. So on March 18th, we received a waiver to postpone the fifth graders from the elementary timeline into the middle school timeline, since they are really students at our middle school. So what will be happening here at Greenfield Public Schools is that students in grades pre-K through 4 will be returning to in-person learning full-time on April 5th, and that grades 5 through 12 will return on April 28th. And the reason why we did that at the high school is because our middle school, what was typically often considered a middle school student, being an 8th grader, is actually at Greenfield High School. So we just felt it was in the best interest to be able to do that. That said, the commissioner has stated that parents and caregivers do have the opportunity to choose to remain in remote learning mode for the remainder of the school year. That will not be the case come fall of 2021. The expectation is everybody will be back, but he has given people that opportunity. By tomorrow, you will receive a new survey that's going to ask for a little more details about your intentions moving forward. We hope that this webinar gives you the opportunity to be able to make an informed decision about that. What we are also doing with the folks who are remote, if at some point you decide you want to come back into in-person, the commissioner has said that a 4 to 6 week timeline needs to be followed in terms of making provision for students to be in the classroom and the school environment, as well as for transportation. We believe we can do that in 4 weeks. We don't necessarily have to wait to the 6 week timeline, but just so people know that if for some reason you choose to stay remote and then you decide to join us later, it is going to take some time to get all of the logistics in place. And so that's why the 4-week lead time is there.
Thanks, Dr. Houle. One of the questions that has come up often from parents is, how do you ensure that the education of students who remain remote is not going to be impacted by sitting in a classroom with some kids in a classroom, some kids are remote. If you decide to keep your child remote, what does that look like?
Basically, it'll look pretty similar to what's going on right now with everybody being remote. There'll be some times when you'll have a synchronous live lesson with your teacher. And there will be some times when students are doing asynchronous work on their own in Google Classroom. Those things will stay in place no matter which environment students are in. The difference will be that the teacher will be able to have the students in the classroom see their peers through the use of our smart boards and cameras that way on their devices. So students in the classroom and remote learners can still continue to interact together.
Thank you. One more question on this is, what happens if a student starts with the on-site or on-campus learning and then switches back to remote? Will they be penalized? What will that look like? And what does happen if they start with the online on campus but then switch back to remote?
That's an easier switch than coming back into in-person. So if a parent decides that it's not feasible or tenable for a child to stay with us in person, they need to notify the school principal that they're choosing to go back to the remote modality, and that can happen pretty quickly. But again, just to remind parents that if you're at remote and you want to come back into the in-person environment, we are going to need some lead time to make sure that desks are in place and with proper distancing, that we've made all of the logistical preparations that we need to make sure that everyone is safe.
And lastly, in terms of the general district questions that have come up, is many parents and guardians are concerned about students' social emotional health. And if students are going to be high anxiety or stressed or have fear about returning to in-person schooling. What is the district doing to prepare to handle students who are dealing with anxiety or fear of coming back to school?
First of all, we do have a full complement of counselors within the district who can be helpful to students who are having some issues. We're really making sure that we're arranging the school day so that children are greeted immediately upon entry by our staff to make sure that the transition into the school environment can be as comfortable as possible. And at the end of this presentation, I'll show you some of the preparations that have already taken place to make our schools a warm and welcoming environment as we move through this process.
We're going to switch to the next subject area now, and that would be transportation. And one of the questions that came up often was if we could explain the drop-off and pickup guidelines, as some parents said, this was already complicated before COVID. So can parents pick up in person? Can different adults pick up on different days? And where can I find my bus schedule?
Sure. Let me just speak generally to transportation. As you know, we have two vendors, or maybe people don't know that, but we contract with Kuzmeskis for our regular education transportation. And then we also have our own fleet of buses for special needs transportation. As you can see in the two photos on the top, which are views of the Kuzmeskis bus fleet, that they have, they will be riding with windows open. And let me just grab a pointer here so you can see that the windows will be cracked for ventilation purposes. You can see that there are X's on the seat because they are limited to 2 riders per seat. Everyone will be required to wear a mask when you enter the bus. And there will also be assigned seating. So that way we're sure that we're keeping people in as contained a space as possible through that. The same thing is true for our special needs fleet, our own fleet. As you can see again from our Greenfield bus here, that we have some windows that are open for ventilation purposes. There's hand sanitizer on all of the buses. And this is one of our bus drivers over here in the last picture, and it's a little difficult to see, but he's holding an electrostatic sprayer that all of the buses will be cleaned between runs and will be electrostatically cleaned every day so that we can be sure that they're as sanitized as possible. And then I'll kick it over to the principals and Justin, you can call on whoever you'd like to explain
Sure.
pickup and drop off in their buildings.
Sure. I'll start with Principal Fenimore at the Federal Street School. Could you give us your update on transportation and how bus schedules will work?
Sure. So at Federal Street School, our kiddos who get dropped off or walk to the building will use the front driveway of the Federal Street School entrance, and they'll follow the similar procedures as previous, and we'll have school staff out there to direct cars and direct children to their classrooms. If they are taking a bus, the buses will pull up on the Franklin Street side of the school, and the children will enter through the gate in the back and then proceed to the two different doors and head to their classrooms.
Thank you very much for that. Let's go to Principal Goodwin at the Newton Street.
Transportation is clearly on every parent's mind. I've gotten a lot of phone calls today for transportation. And so I think one of the most important things parents can do is, if you're using a school bus, to really communicate with the bus drivers. If you're having different people pick up your child from a bus stop, they're going to need to know that. If they don't know the person who picks up your child from the bus stop, they will bring them back to our schools. Also, our drop-off and pickup will be the same as it has been in the past. We use the circle in front of Newton School. It will take time, so please be patient with us to get everybody off the bus safely and out of cars. We are asking for parents to stay in their cars. At dismissal, we are asking again for parents to stay in their cars. Parents cannot congregate in front of our school so that we can keep social distancing for the children who are leaving the building. We want to make sure that parents are waiting on the sidewalk in front of our school or in the grassy area. We do know that parents are going to have changes in who's picking up, whether it's grandma or grandpa or Aunt Sally picking up their child. There will be many changes in the schedule. We do ask that we are notified of those changes either with a note that your child can bring in the morning or by 2:30 in the afternoon, so we can make sure that your child is either on the bus or waiting for a pickup.
Thank you. And Principal Putnam at the Discovery School.
Hello. So transportation at the Discovery School, we're hoping to have all of the buses be dropping off and picking up at the upper law on Bernardston Road to help with some of the congestion for arrival and dismissal time. We're still working on some of the details for the car line and for walkers. We want to try to utilize different entrances and exits. So we're still kind of hashing out some of those minute details, and I will communicate those to all of you as soon as it's figured out. Thank you.
Thank you. And how about at the middle and high school? Principal Dole?
Yes. At Greenfield Middle School, parents will drop off and pick up their children at Sanderson Street as they have in the past. And our buses will be pulling into the parking lot area as they did last year. All of our students will be entering the school building through the Sanderson Street entrance. And I have to say that one of the things I'm looking forward to is greeting parents and students at Sanderson Street as I did last year. Thank you.
Thanks. And Principal Patnod?
Hi, everyone. At the high school, we are going to utilize the event entrance, which is the rear of the school. So we're asking even parent drop-off and walkers to enter through Kent Avenue or Bar Avenue and proceed in a one-way direction around to the back of the school at the event entrance and drop off students there. We will be making a map for everyone so that it's easily acknowledged when you're pulling in. After 7:45, students can enter and be buzzed into the school at our front entrance.
Thanks for that. Dr. Houle, I'm not sure if this question is for you or for the principals, but many of the parents and guardians have expressed concern about having, if they're not using school buses and they're trying to drop their kids off at schools, if they have to drop off one student at Federal Street and one student at Newton, that they might be late for one or the other, and what kind of leeway is going to be offered for getting students to school on time.
So this slide kind of shows the hours of operation in terms of how we're going to open and close schools on certain days. And as you can see, both AEL and all of the other elementary schools are running on the same schedule. We are doing this so we honor the teacher's contract in terms of when they start their workday and giving them the opportunity to get in and get prepared for students in the morning. Pickup and drop off is going to be a process. So people are not required to be there on the minute of the entry time or the dismissal time because of how things are working. So if you have two children in two different buildings, start at one building and then trot on over to the other. And we understand that people are going to be making some of those changes. So, when you get there, we'll still be bringing students in. There will be staff available to help students who get in. We are asking parents to understand that we cannot accept students before 8:30. We don't have the capacity right now to follow the protocols that we must follow for physical distancing and keeping students as in cohorts as possible. So we really need parents to work with us and understand that 8:30 would be the earliest possible moment to drop a child off.
Thank you, Dr. Houle. Let's switch to one of the more common questions that was asked, subject matters that was asked over the last couple of days, and that had to do with breakfast and lunch and snack time and free time. And so many parents have asked to explain the breakfast and lunch process. Will there still be a menu to anticipate choices? Will it be grab and go food? Will it be hot? Will it be cold? Much of those types of questions. And also, where can they find their school lunch menus?
So everything's going to be grab and go because we can't have open traditional lunch lines as we once knew those because of the restrictions again due to COVID-19. So everything is going to be grab and go. There will be a combination of both hot and cold items available to students. And this is a screenshot of the main page of our website, which is gpsk12.org. As you can see, I've highlighted the place that you can go to on our website. I do know that our principals send out newsletters with the menus as well, but if you can't find an email or where the menu is, you can always find it at our website by clicking on departments, and I'll click the link and take you right there. So you go there, drops down, you can see one for food services, click that. That brings you to the food service website. And over here on the left, you can see the menus for the month. Our food service personnel have been working diligently for several months serving meals to the community, and we are extremely grateful for all the hard work that they have done. And they're going to continue to try and provide nutritious options for students. One of the things that has also been asked is about whether or not parents can provide a lunch, and that is certainly possible. We're just reminding parents, please, to be mindful of the fact that students are in our buildings who have allergies to certain foods, particularly nut allergies. So to be mindful that things like peanut butter, if you can avoid those kinds of things, would be really helpful, particularly if your child has a classmate who is someone who is very susceptible to those allergies. And then principals, I don't know if you want to talk about where and how meals will be served in your buildings. So
Yeah, I'll call on Principal Fenimore to start us off with that.
Sure. At Federal Street School, all students will have breakfast in the classroom. So it'll look traditionally what it has in the past with carts. Students will enter the classroom and just grab their breakfast, and that will be super easy for them and the teachers. In terms of lunchtime, our kindergarten and first grade students will eat their lunch in the classroom, and our students grades 2 through 4 will eat in a socially, physically distant cafeteria setup, and they'll just walk in the cafeteria, grab their lunch, and head to their assigned seat. But it's a nice opportunity for our older kiddos to see other friends they haven't seen all year in a safe way.
Thank you for that. Principal Putnam, how about at your school?
Sure. Hi. It is the intention of our school to have breakfast and lunch in the classroom, and we have carts that will be delivered for students and teachers to grab and go. Also, we would love to utilize the outdoor space that we have for lunches and be able to do both picnic lunches, and we also have wonderful PTO has purchased each student a foldable camp chair that they can bring outside with them, and that will be another place that they can sit and eat lunch if they feel necessary.
Thanks for that. Principal Goodwin, how about at your school?
Newton School will be doing the same thing that the Discovery School at Four Corners is doing. We're going to have breakfast in the classroom as well as lunch in the classroom. And we're excited because we're already planning picnics outside. The PTO has bought great lawn chairs, and there are beach towels being discussed. We're going to use our outdoors to make our lunches very festive.
Thank you. Principal Dole?
At Greenfield Middle School, we're very honored to be hosting the food production system that has already provided over 500,000 meals to our young people in Greenfield since last March. And that production process takes place in our school cafeteria. So when our students return, our students are going to be eating in the gym, which allows for lots of social distancing and spacing. And we'll use the gym for both breakfast and lunch at Greenfield Middle School.
And how about at the high school, Principal Patnod?
At Greenfield High School, we will be utilizing our cafeteria and our gymnasium, and students will have individualized desks to sit and eat at during breakfast and lunch.
Thank you. One of the questions that I think has been answered, but I guess I'll put this over to Dr. Houle as well, is that will there be an opportunity for students to eat outside? Will there be tents Could parents assist in providing students with other outside opportunities for their lunch?
Sure. And I can kind of encompass that into a discussion around snack and free time. Certainly, we will be allowing students to have an opportunity to be out of doors as much as possible, weather permitting. One of those ways is through 2 mandatory mask breaks per day. That's per the guidance that we are getting from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And again, that will be outdoors, weather permitting. People have asked about access to bathrooms and access to water. Certainly, we'll have bathroom breaks built in for students. We'll be monitoring for the purposes of contact tracing just to make sure that bathroom breaks are where they need to be. And, we'll have access to water so that students can have water during the day. Parents are welcome to bring in water bottle, have their students bring in water bottles and use those if they'd like. And we're working on making sure that everybody's provisioned. We are going to use our outdoors as classroom spaces as well. We are working on getting some Wi-Fi access outside so that those who are at home can still join us. So that's something we're working on in conjunction with the town. Physical activities, phys ed, hands-on learning, all of those things will be taking place in an outdoor environment when applicable and able to be done. Again, with protocols in place, and like my friend Kermit, masks will be worn during those times.
This is a good time to segue into another topic area that came up, is the classrooms themselves. Many of the parents and guardians asked if there would be an opportunity to tour classrooms before the schools reopen.
Unfortunately, other than some very specific and small tours for some of our youngest learners, like our pre-K, kindergarten, and potentially our 5th graders at the middle school and 8th graders at the high school, we're not going to be able to do full-on tours. We did have a videographer who came around and did a tour of the buildings and has produced a video tour that you will be able to see very soon posted. It's a great virtual tour that shows you the entire classroom environment. These are photos from some of our schools, so you can see what some of the classrooms look like. Again, we're required to have all students facing forward and to be furniture-wise a minimum of 3 feet apart. The standard that we're using here in the Greenfield Public Schools is that at all times, students will be physically student to student 6 feet apart and student to teacher 6 feet apart. If we can't meet that standard, we are putting up plexiglass barriers to be able to help mitigate against that. But so desks can be as close as 3 feet. Right now, we're seeing that our desks can be almost 6 feet and still meet that 6-foot standard and still be able to welcome everybody back into the classroom.
Thank you. Dr. Padnod, Principal Padnod, this one's for you, I think. Several parents and guardians have expressed concern or curiosity at how the high school is going to monitor student flow to make sure that students are not, hugging, when they see each other, or holding hands, or other physical contact that sometimes high school kids are known to do. So what are some of the precautionary steps that you're putting in at the high school?
Sure. We've implemented one-way hallways, so students will all be traveling out of their classrooms in one direction. We also have increased hall monitors. We also are going to do staggered dismissals from each class so that there's a longer passing time, so congestion can be moderate. And we will have administration and adults in hallways at all times when we are passing to ensure student safety.
Thank you. And what about at the middle school, Principal Joel?
Our procedures are very similar with one-way hallways and adult supervision. Thank you.
Thanks. Will there be any difference in the in-person learning? What will that look like specifically? Will students still be using Google Classrooms or other online platforms to use and submit work, or will it be more of a normal classroom setting? Dr. Houle?
It will be sort of a combination of the two things. Obviously, with in-person, students will be able to interact directly with their teacher, along with their remote classmates on a screen that will not require them to be on their individual computers. But because of the way that we have set up the learning environment for students with Google Classroom and the routines that teachers have set for students to submit assignments, during those asynchronous moments when a group lesson is over, the students in the classroom will be using Google Classroom to submit their assignments for the most part, unless there's some other activity that they need to be doing. And the students who are in the remote environment will be using Google Classroom to do that asynchronous piece as well.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next subject area, which is COVID concerns. There is still, as everyone knows, still questions and concerns from parents, guardians, and students about that. One of the questions that come up is will all GPS staff and teachers have had their shots prior to having children back on campus? And what is the rush of this? Where is this coming from to reopen the schools in April? And why not stay remote until the fall when everyone would, in theory, have had a shot or vaccination by then?
Sure, and I want to address several safety strategies that we have in place. Vaccines have been made available to teachers. They've been available now for a couple of weeks. The governor has also set aside specific days for teachers to be vaccinated where clinics are not open to anybody else but teachers or educators in the K-12 environment and other staff members who work with them. So people are in the process of getting vaccinated and are at least getting first shots of the two-shot regimen for those who are getting either Pfizer or Moderna. And some other people like me, we're fortunate enough to get the Johnson & Johnson shot, so we're one and done. So that is working, but we're doing several other things to make sure that the environment is safe as we go through this process. On the left-hand side, upper left-hand corner of this screen, you can see an image of one of the air purifiers that we will be putting in spaces that have anything less than 6 air exchanges per hour. Teachers will also be encouraged to open the windows of their classroom, again, to increase airflow as well. Hand sanitizer and cleaning will be available in every classroom for individual use, as well as our custodial staff that will be cleaning and using those electrostatic sprayers in the classrooms every night to sterilize the environment. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see the social distancing signs that have been placed on all of the floors so that students know to stay 6 feet apart. And those are many of the mitigation strategies that are in place to make sure that our schools are as safe as possible. We also have the daily 4. This is something we're trying to embed into the life of our school, is to remind everyone every day to wear a mask, to wash your hands and use hand sanitizer, to stay apart, and to stay home if you don't feel well. So one of the things that we're also asking families to help us with is to do a symptom check of your child every single day around these areas, and to be aware of things that are new symptoms and symptoms that might not be associated with the common cold, or we're coming into allergy season, that these would not be normal allergy things. And oftentimes with COVID-19, it's not just one of these symptoms, but it is a constellation of them together that might need to be dealt with. Our nurses are putting together packets of information for parents that we'll be sharing with you shortly. And there's a form that allows you to be able to sign off that says that you'll help us by making this commitment to a symptom check. Other things that we're doing on site to make sure, again, that we're running as safely as possible while we wait for everybody to get vaccines is something called pooled testing. And you may have heard about this recently in the news. This is a way to be able to test a lot of folks all at once. It allows us to put all of the samples into a single pool and have that test run pretty quickly and pretty economically. So how it happens is that a student will, or an adult will swab their nose, and then they'll put the swabs into a common container. They go back to class and do what they need to do. Meantime, those swabs get picked up and they get tested at a lab, and then the results come back. If the entire pool is negative, we're good and we move on. If there is a positive result in the pool, then we reach out to whoever was in that pool and making sure that everybody gets an individual test at that point. Once we figure out who the individual is who gets that, who has had that positive response, there is a quarantine for that student, and then other appropriate protocols around either quarantining or isolating from others. We have medical waiting rooms in all of our schools so that if somebody is found to be positive and is on site, we get them isolated very quickly. So we get them away from the general population, and then we begin the contact tracing process. So this is a lot of serious stuff, so I thought I would share something that's a little bit fun with you as well around pool testing. One of our teachers found this video online, and it's just the greatest little thing. This is a second grader who's going to teach you all about pool testing and how it works. So here we go.
Today I'm going to show you how to do a nasal swab. Step 1. Hand sanitize your hands. Step 2. Take out the nasal swab. Don't touch the side that you are gonna put up your nose. Step 3, take the swab and put it in your nose and spin it around 4 times. Then do the same thing in your other nostril. Last step, drop it boogers down into the tube. You're done.
So this is something that we thought would be also good to share with children, because sometimes children hear the message from other children more than they hear it from adults. So we just thought this was kind of a fun way of letting everybody know that pool testing is not that difficult. We will be doing it twice a week within each of the buildings, but people will only be asked to be tested once a week if you give permission to do so. And we're offering it twice so that if a child is absent on one day, we can make sure that we can get them on a second day during that week.
Thanks for that, Dr. Houle. We'll switch to the last subject matter, which was a question that's come up a few times, is that regarding MCAS testing. And many of the parents and guardians have asked, will students still be required to take the MCAS? How will it work? And can they opt out?
So we have, there we go. So we have two things that we have to overcome as hurdles in this particular process. One is at the state level up on Beacon Hill, and the other is at the federal level with the Department of Education at the federal government. And the reason why is because MCAS testing is actually part of the law in Massachusetts, particularly the requirement that 10th graders take it in order to graduate. Last year, we were able to get the legislature to agree to not make that a requirement for graduation for that current group of 10th graders at that time. There is a move afloat to try and get the legislature to act again. The Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, to which I belong, has put out some strong statements. School committees across the Commonwealth, including the Greenfield School Committee, have made public statements and that have been forwarded along to let folks know that MCAS testing is probably not the way we should be going this year. But the other hurdle is with the Federal Department of Education, because this is also a federal requirement, and it is a federal requirement that is attached to some of the funds that we receive to educate our students. So again, there is a move at the national level to get the Federal Department of Education to provide a waiver. We don't think this is in the best interest of kids coming back to school late in the spring to then take much of that time to test versus to teach. And we just don't think that the data are going to really be useful this year, because there have been so many different models of educating students both in Massachusetts and across the nation. So we don't believe that this is a good idea. We don't believe it's going to give good data. And so people are really working to get through this particular process. Unfortunately, Massachusetts is not in what we call an opt-out state for MCAS. There are other states that parents can opt out of the testing. Massachusetts is not one of them. So again, there's a lot of advocacy going on with regard to both at the state and federal legislative levels to be able to convince both bodies that we need to think differently about testing this year.
Thank you, Dr. Houle. And, we did say at the outset here that we were trying to keep this to under an hour of a meeting, and we're at 45 minutes. So it looks like we're on pace to do that. One of the things I neglected to mention at the beginning or the outset here was that we are going to be taking a list of frequently asked questions from parents and the community and publishing them on the website in the coming days. So look for that as well. And you can certainly continue to submit questions to your principal or to the superintendent via email if you have other questions you'd like to address on this topic. And Dr. Houle, I'll turn over to you for closing remarks.
Thank you. So one of the things that we are really trying to encourage everybody, staff and families as well, and thinking about personal responsibilities that people will be taking as a key to success in this process. We're asking people to make good decisions, to be following those guidelines outside of school, and particularly if you have teenagers in your house who think they are invincible, to remind them that masking when they're out in public, staying distant from others when they're out in public is just really a must. I do know that the governor has relaxed the travel order into a travel advisory in terms of traveling out of state and quarantining. Again, we're just asking people to please be mindful of your travel plans. I know April vacation is coming up. It's a beautiful warm day today. Everybody's got on their mind that they want to get outside and get away. It's been a long year, but we're just, again, asking people to be really mindful that traveling far and wide could compromise our environment. And again, we're really looking to try and make things as safe as possible. And just those personal precautions, following the daily 4 at home certainly is something that we're asking folks to do as well. So as we welcome everyone back, I just want to say that, we do understand that this is a trying time for everybody. We recognize that fact. We also recognize that this is a rapidly changing environment. As we put out things that we're trying to do, oftentimes things change, regulations change, or, parameters change, and they change pretty quickly. So again, we're trying to make sure that we are being responsive to those changes as they happen in real time, and want to ask your cooperation with us as we do that as well. But just some examples of how, even though, as you've seen in some of the pictures of physically distant spaces and whatever, it looks kind of cold and sterile, I just want you to know that teachers and principals are at work really trying to make the classroom environment and the school environment a welcoming place. And as I toured around the schools last week, these are some of the things that I saw. I saw that one teacher had some stools in her classroom for the children to sit on, and had actually taken the time to stencil messages like, "You are smart, you are unique, you are special." so that when the children come back, they see these positive messages from their teacher. Bulletin boards where, let's root for each other and watch each other grow, with names of students on a bulletin board so that the students can see their names and feel welcome in the environment. And then just fun images to remember about being physically distant. That giant taco is on a bulletin board at Federal Street School, and it is actually 6 feet wide to remind students that they need to stay socially distant, but we're just, again, trying to do it in a way that makes it as comfortable and as warm, as welcoming as we can under the circumstances. Please also stay tuned for updates throughout the process in terms of where we stand. So next steps in the process will be that there will be a follow-up survey, probably that will go out tomorrow, that we're going to ask you to turn around as quickly as possible so we can begin to work with transportation on bus routes and all of those things that we need to do. So be on the lookout for that survey to come out. There will be frequent updates on our website, right on the main page. If you go to gpsk12.org, you'll see an interim superintendent's update. I try to do them at least weekly. They will be happening more frequently in the coming days as we get closer to April 5th, and being able to do those kinds of things. So, keep those things in mind. Notices about these go out via school messenger. So if you have not been getting messages from me, it probably means that your email is incorrect in our Power School system, because that's where School Messenger gets it from. So if you have access to the parent portal, you might want to be able to take a moment to go in and make sure that your email is correct if you haven't been getting messages from the district about some of these updates and things that you need to know about. If you're having problems accessing the portal, certainly call your child's school and have them run a check on your email just to make sure that you're able to receive those things. And sometimes these messages that come from School Messenger, because they are bulk messages, depending on what you use for email, could consider it to be spam. So check your spam folder and then make sure that anything that comes from the district in a bulk message, that you enable to come directly into your inbox. Those things will be helpful as well. And last, I just want to express my deep appreciation to the administration and staff who have worked tirelessly over the past 3 weeks to really iron out these details in the plan. Our transportation vendor has been extremely collaborative and accommodating to our scheduling needs. I'm really grateful to the team and their continued commitment to bringing our students and staff back to a safe and welcoming environment. Our custodians have been working very hard at moving desks into schools and moving furniture out of schools that would be in the way of us being able to accommodate every child, and all of the cleaning that they have done and are continuing to do. They've really worked super hard, and I'm really grateful to all of them. And I just want to express my thank yous to our community partners and to our families for helping us work through this very difficult time. And I'm sure that by working together, we're going to be able to make this to work for our students. And so I want to thank you for your time today, and wish you all a great rest of the day. And it looks like a great day to get outdoors and enjoy some sunshine. So take care, everybody, and have a great afternoon.